Hey guys, Kalibur here. So recently I've been making quite a few videos on the HitBox or AllButton controller, and I think it's about time that I make a how to improve at using that type of controller for people who are, just picking it up, want to know what's the best way to, get better as fast as possible. So I've asked this question on Twitter and on Discord actually, and I got a few replies. So for this video I want to go through the replies of other HitBox users and add a few comments on my own, as well as my own tips that I have found to be kind of helpful throughout basically the year that I'm playing on this controller. So let's get to it. So first person I want to go through is a person by Kaz who said, find a 2D platformer or Metroidvania game you like, and then map the jump button to the 30mm button. So I think that's a cool idea. You wanna use the controller as much as possible, and playing games that aren't fighting games is one of the ways that I think are really cool, and getting used to the actual controller, how it feels. I think that's a cool idea. So Grinning Oni says, much like drumming, you can practice kind of anywhere. While starting out, some inputs are kind of unintuitive or awkward because you haven't built up the needed finger strength. You can practice those inputs anywhere. So just tap them out on your desktop or on your leg or anywhere. So I think that's very important too. Like whenever you're practicing something complicated that requires dexterity, you really need to take it slow. So that's one step at a time. So that's a very good point. So which is, I think I agree. That's a really good one. You want to be able to just move your fingers in the way that you would have to use it when you're playing fighting games or whatever with the AllButton controller. So Alright, so this one by Ace Strikes, he says, I press the jump with my right hand so that the jump attack is on the same hand and more likely to be at the same time. It also makes me focus more on my left to just be down and not to get confused with a potential jump. Definitely practice doing DPs on player 2 side 2 times more than the player 1 side because the ring finger needs all the help it can get. I think that I agree on that a lot. Definitely the weakest finger, I believe, are like these two fingers right here. The left, like if you're not left-handed, I believe. If you're right-handed, your left ring finger and the pinky are pretty much the most underused fingers ever. So definitely putting them to work is very important. Yes, exactly. Another thing he pointed out was using the jump with your right hand. So that is very important too. Like a lot of things, it's a lot easier to press jump, the up button, the up input, with your right hand instead of your left. You'd think that, you want to put all of the movement, the directions inputs with one hand, but it actually helps to have it on the right hand most of the time. There are some instances where you might want to use it on your left, but I think, definitely think of it as like a Game Boy controller where there's like an A button, right? I think that's the best way you want to see this type of controller, as this is the A button. So that'll help you a lot when it comes to like doing very complicated like inputs in fighting games. A-Strike also mentions that the hardest part for HitBox was the actual attack buttons because he's actually never played on stick. So I assume he's been playing on pad this entire time. So definitely, if your hands aren't used to doing this kind of motion, it will take time to get used to as well. Yes, that is also true. But I feel like if you're right-handed, it'll be a lot faster. I think you'll get used to doing these type of motions much more faster than doing like anything on your left, especially when you're playing matches, right? You're basically moving all the time, and then when you do something, you have to actually do like a specific motion, like a quarter circle forward or a jump attack. It's very complex when you use your left more than your right, because when you're doing right, you're just pressing attack buttons and stuff like that. So next up we have one from Gray. So it took him less than 2 hours to get used to the controller, but to be confident was a whole nother thing. Practice fireball motions on each side and jumping forwards and backwards, learning shortcuts, etc. Definitely taking the time to just get used to it is very important. especially practicing like the motions. So for me, when I was playing, yeah, I definitely, the first thing I did was try to, how much of what I used to do on my old controller can I do in this controller? So that wasn't like, you know, the basic fundamental input motions, right? So quarter circle forward, quarter circle back, or DP. I think the most important one that you probably use is quarter circle forward or quarter circle back, especially on 1 and 2 player side. I think in a lot of games, like they definitely will have a quarter circle forward or back. Like some games don't have DP motions, but you will definitely see like a quarter circle, quarter back. So definitely being able to get used to that motion is very, very important, yeah. Jumping as well, yeah. Jumping as well, because when you're on stick, you're basically pushing the lever up, but then getting the right timing for jumping is quite tricky when you're used to using the stick. It's like, oh man, I gotta jump now, so I, you know, gotta press. I have to actually do a completely different thing with my muscles to actually do the same thing that I used to do with my just one hand, right? So pressing, using my thumbs, yeah, to jump basically, which is, you know, something you don't really think about, but then when you actually get to it, it's like, oh wow, that's just kind of weird. So definitely, yeah, getting those basic fundamental movements is definitely the top of your priority when you're trying to learn this controller, for sure. So here's one by Jojo. He says, practice a bit every day. So yeah, that does sound obvious, but there is something like you can take away from this. So when I first picked up this controller, I basically used it every single day, like even just a little bit. I think that really is important, because a lot of people might, you know, spend one day practicing a lot and then maybe don't practice for a couple of days, come back to it, and then, you know, there's this huge time gaps in between, and you're not really maximizing the efficiency of your muscle memory when you're actually, you know. So definitely, yeah, every day, like even if it's just a little bit, even if it's just 5 minutes every day, I think, you know, it's something when you hear it's like, oh, that's obvious, but it actually is very important to, you know, practice as much as you can in more, you know, consistent times than actually, you know, practicing a whole bunch on the weekend and then, you know, waiting for a whole week, and then sometimes you'll forget, you know, to actually practice. Yeah, so I actually practiced, yeah, even just a little bit every single day, like literally every day, even on the weekends when I, you know, when I have other things to do, I'll make sure to come back home into, like, you know, boot up training mode and just play something, you know, anything really. Yeah, so yeah, that was good advice for sure. Alright, so this next one by Tyler, who's actually left-handed. So actually, yeah, we got a left-hander here, yay. So his only advice is to practice different types of fighting games and to work on the P2 side a lot. P2 side is his strong side on the stick, but his weak side on his hitbox. Okay, so yeah, that's interesting. So definitely, yeah, you definitely, you know, when you're a left-hander or right-hander, it doesn't really matter. You do have a stronger side and a weaker side. Yeah, and I think, yeah, you can actually, you know, that's a very good advice for learning both stick and hitbox for sure. So yeah, that's an interesting take. Yeah, okay, cool. Alright, so those are all the replies that I got. Thank you so much. So now I want to go through my personal tips and tricks that I find quite useful in learning this controller. But before that, if you've enjoyed this video so far, yeah, it would be great if you left a like and yeah, a sub. Anyways, let's get to it. So my first piece of advice is to actually do finger strength training. So what I mean is, I actually went and picked up one of these things. They're used for guitars, yeah, for guitar training, to practice on your, yeah, fret fingers. So I usually use one of these, yeah. So the reasoning is that I wanted to build up the strength between, you know, my brain to the fingers, so that actually to get my fingers to be more, you know, stronger. Because I don't move my fingers on my left hand as much as I do on my right hand, I think that there's like less muscle strength, and because of that, it's less responsive and less faster. Less fast? Slower? Yeah, slower, and much more slower. So the idea with this was when I'm not playing any fighting games or games in general, and I'm just out and about, maybe at work or somewhere, or on the way to work, I have this in my pocket and I would just, you know, practice doing, you know, movement with the fingers. And I would probably do like a little, you know, DP motion, or like, you know, push all three together. And yeah, I think it helped a lot actually, yeah. Especially at the beginning of when I was learning this controller, yeah. So yeah, you know, if you ever, you know, it does cost money, so you know, if you're actually that, you know, hardcore, you know, I think yeah, it's worth picking it up. You know, you can probably find cheap ones, you know, online. Yeah, this is a cheap one from Amazon, so yeah. So tip number 2 is to use things that you would normally use on your right hand with your left hand. So I would use things like my mouse for my computer when I would do work. I would actually use it on my left hand, which is at first really excruciating and hard because my fingers just didn't have the dexterity. But you know, when I was at work, I would actually use the mouse on my left hand, and you know, the first click would be on my ring finger, right? So that would be my weakest finger for, you know, using HitBox AllButton. So I'd be using that, you know, I'd be using this hand a lot more. So the goal for this was to actually, you know, just strengthen the signals between my brain and to my left hand, because, you know, like I don't use my left hand a lot. Like I don't even play, you know, PC games where I use the WASD. So I think if you're definitely a person who has played PC games, you know, it'd probably be a lot easier and you probably don't need this tip. But for me, I definitely found it a lot helpful to do little activities to just strengthen that signal between your brain, you know, those neurons between your brain and your fingers on your left hand. And over time, I did get much better at using the mouse on my left hand. And yeah, I don't know, yeah, I think it helped, you know. I'm no scientist. There's probably, you know, this is, you know, there's no guarantee or proof that this will actually help you at getting better at the AllButton controller, but I think for me, I feel like it did. So, you know, if you want to try something like that, definitely give it a try, especially if you're away from, you know, playing games. So yeah, definitely. These are definitely exercises that are mostly for when you're not playing fighting games or not playing on the controller itself, yeah. But right. And my third and final tip would be to take a break and play games that aren't fighting games with your controller. So my favorite game to play on the AllButton controller is rhythm games. The reason why is rhythm games, you gotta be pressing all buttons a lot. And especially if you can find a game that requires you to press, you know, on your left hand. And I think that helps a lot more better than platformers, or even just like other games with WASD, because you're doing a lot more complex motions with your left hand than with other games that are platformers. For example, with platformers, you can just be going left, right, jump, you know, which is great and all, which is very important too. But you're not practicing DP motions or quarter circle or anything complicated like that, or doing like, you know, slides, you know, from left, down, right, you know, all that kind of thing, or any of those complex things at a very fast pace. So what rhythm games can do is help you, 1, practice on the controller, 2, get used to just, you know, moving your fingers at a really fast pace. And then I think it's a really good exercise. Even if you don't use HitBox or AllButton or just play on stick, I think even then, like being able to press buttons really fast, you know, get that hand-eye coordination is, yeah, really helpful. But yes, anyways, these are tips that were mainly applied to when you're not playing and want to maximize the practice time. So the idea is you'll be playing on the fighting game that of your choice in training mode with the controller, and that's the ideal environment. You want to be playing on the game itself. You know, there's no point in playing, you know, rhythm games or practicing outside if you need the game to actually give you that, you know, response to when you're pressing. You know, it has to tell you if you're doing it right or not. But you're not going to be playing fighting games or even games all the time. So these tips that I gave are very, very helpful in just maximizing the time to improve. And if you do this for like a month, I feel like you could be able to play, you know, just like you did with your previous controller. So yeah. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. If you enjoyed it, yeah, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. And I want to hear about your tips. If you have any tips that weren't mentioned in this video, definitely please leave it in the comment section. And yeah, anyways, that's all for today. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, see you guys later. Bye. Maybe I'll give it a try. Is that? Can you guys see that? Right? Okay. Let's watch me. Watch. Oh, not this song. Ooh, ooh. The. Miseterio Ragnar.